Omagyanatimanasya Jnanasla Shanakya Saksamilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Omagyanatimanasya Jnanasla Shanakya Saksamilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chichitayamanupistam Staptam Yena Bhutale Skamapkadamyam Dadati Svapadantikam. Vandayam Shio Shiyuda Padakamalam Shigam Vaishnavam Sa Shirupam Jagajatam Saganaragnatam Fitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Suduktam Bhajana Setam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagarita Shikshakam Vitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Pate Gopesha Gopka Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Krishna Gauri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavana Sutadevi Pranamama Hare Priya Vancha Kalpa Vishakhe Pasan Vishabhatnam Bhavana Bhyo Vaishnavyo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskata Desakarane Srila Prabhupada Ki. Today we will start a new chapter. Let's start chapter 2. Hiranyakashipu, king of the demons. The previous chapter, the last verse, Maharaj Yudhishthira inquired, O my lord Narad Muni, why was there such enmity between Hiranyakashipu and his beloved son Prahlad Maharaj? How did Prahlad Maharaj become such a great devotee of Lord Krishna? Please explain this to me. And now this new chapter starts. And the answering verse 1, Narada Muni start answering that question. So, yes, why was the enmity there between Prahlad and his father Hiranyakashipu? The enmity is there because Vishnu killed his brother, the brother of Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha. And Prahlad, he was worshipping Vishnu, and therefore Vishnu is his enemy. So we have here text 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shinarad Uvacha Brata Hevam Viniyate Harina Kroda Murtina Hiranyakashipu Rajan Paryataptya Rusa Chucha. Shri Narada Muni said, my dear King Yudhishthira, when Lord Vishnu in the form of Varaha, the boar, killed Hiranyaksha's brother, Hiranyakashipu was extremely angry. And that's text 2. Atashedam Rusa Pona Sandasta Dasanachata Kapol Falapyam Sakrosyam Nirikshandum Ram Ambaram, filled with rage and biting his lips, Hiranyakashipu gazed at the sky with eyes that blazed in anger, making the whole sky smoky. Thus he began to speak. That Srila Prabhupada in the purport, right? As usual, the demon is envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and inimical toward him. These were Hiranyakashipu's external bodily features as he considered how to kill Lord Vishnu and devastate his kingdom, Vaikuntha Loka. So here we see already the anger of Hiranyakashipu. Concentration in anger. Concentration of the Lord in anger. So we read the next 3 verses. Exhibiting his terrible teeth, fierce glance, and frowning eyebrows, terrible to see, he took up his weapon, a trident, and thus began speaking to his associates, the assembled demons. O Danavas, O Daityas, O Tvimurta, Triyaksha, Sambar, and Satabahu, O Airiva, Namuchi, Paka, and Ilvala, O Viprashita, Puloman, Sakuni, and other demons. All of you kindly hear me attentively, and then act according to my words without delay. My insignificant enemies, the demigods, have combined to kill my very dear and obedient well-wisher, my brother Hiranyaksha. Although the Supreme Lord Vishnu is equal to both of us, namely the demigods and the demons, this time, being devoutly worshipped by the demigods, has taken their side and helped them to kill Hiranyaksha. So there is a lot of truth in what he says, that Lord Vishnu leans towards the devotees. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that, yes, the demigods, he explains why the demigods are always victorious. Because they are sincere, they follow strictly the orders of the Lord. That if you are a law-abiding citizen, Srila Prabhupada writes, then you have nothing to fear. If you follow the laws, yes, you will be protected. That if you follow the religious principles, you will be protected by these same religious principles. But the next verse, he will compare the Lord to a restless child. That Supreme Personality of Godhead has given up his natural tendency of equality toward the demons and the demigods. Although he is the Supreme Person, now influenced by Maya, he has assumed the form of a boar to please his devotees, the demigods, just as a restless child leans towards someone. I shall therefore sever Lord Vishnu's head from his trunk by my trident, and with the profuse blood from his body I shall please my brother Hiranyaksha, who was so fond of sucking blood. Thus shall I too be peaceful. So here Srila Prabhupada explains how Krishna is just like a child in the purport. Yes. So the defect of the demoniac mentality is expressed in this verse clearly. Hiranyakashipu taught that Vishnu also becomes partial, like a child whose mind is not steady or resolute. The Lord can change his mind at any time, Hiranyakashipu taught, and therefore his words and activities are like those of children. Actually, because the demons are ordinary human beings, their mind is changing, Prabhupada says. And being material conditioned, they think that the personality of God is conditioned also. So Srila Prabhupada explains that, yes, Krishna, how is Krishna just like a child? That, yes, like a child is offered sweets. That Krishna, when he was a baby, then very young, then the gopis would make him dance and offer him sweets. Of course, we offer Krishna also a lot of sweets. That's interesting. Mangala Arti sweets. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada writes in a purport. Hiranyakashipu accused the Supreme Lord of having a restless mind like that of a small child, who can be induced to do anything if simply offered cakes and ladus. Indirectly, it indicates the true position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who says in Bhagavad Gita, Patram Pushma Flamtyam Yomi Bhaktya Payachati Tatyam Bhaktya Paritam Asnami Payatatmana. If one of leaves me with love and devotion, a leaf, a flower, or water, I will accept it. So he accepted when offered with love. He didn't accept the offerings of Duryodhana, but he accepted Vidura's banana peels, and he offered Krishna the banana peels and threw away the bananas. So Hiranyakashipu is saying here, Krishna is influenced by Maya. And Srila Prabhupada explains and says, yes, there is Maya, but this Maya means there is affection, and that is Yoga Maya, spiritual Maya. All this is proof of his affection for the devotees. Of course, we have learned in Shri Upanishad, the Lord has no veins, has no blood. But the demons, Srila Prabhupada, are very much fond of sucking blood, because they are all meat eaters and blood suckers. We see that during the Battle of Kurukshetra, Bhishma Dev shot arrows to Krishna, was offering them with love. That was like an offering of flowers. So, yes. Now, text 9. Now, he's going to tell us, Hiranyakashipu, his plan to finish up Krishna. How he's going to do that. How to finish the demigods and Vishnu. So, by that, Srila Prabhupada in a purport will explain what's the difference between a demigod and a demon. We can look at it from different angles of view. Text 9. Tasmin kute hite naste kittamula vanaspata Vitapa iva susyanti Vishnu prana divokasa. When the root of the tree is cut and the tree falls down, its branches and twigs automatically dry up. Similarly, when I've killed this diplomatic Vishnu, the demigods for whom Lord Vishnu is alive and soul, they will lose their source of their life and wither away. So interesting is that Hiranyakashipu has some knowledge. He knows that Vishnu is a source. That's interesting, and when we can remove the source then of the tree, the root of the tree, all the branches, twigs will dry up. The purport Srila Prabhupada writes, the difference between the demigods and demons is here explained. The demigods always follows the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas the demons simply plan to disturb or kill him. Nevertheless, sometimes the demons very much appreciate the full dependence of the demigods on the mercy of the Lord. This is an indirect glorification of the demigods by the demons, Srila Prabhupada says. That's interesting. Seeing the positive in Hiranyakashipu's statement, glorifying the demigods that they are strict followers of Lord Vishnu. So that's the main characteristic. Devotees, they follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But they also depend fully on the mercy of the Lord. And Hiranyakashipu is factually glorifying that dependence of the demigods on the Lord. But the demons, they simply plan to kill the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, in verse 2, we will learn that Hiranyakashipu has two plans. We will hear about these two plans. Text 10. Tavatyata bhuvam yoyam pamakshatra sameditam suttayatvam tapo chahya svatyaya vatadanina. While I'm engaged in the business of killing Vishnu, go down to the planet Earth, which is flourishing due to Brahminical culture and a Kshatriya government. These people engage in austerity, sacrifice, Vedic study, regulative vows, and charity. Destroy all the people thus engaged. I will kill them all, he said. So two plans: kill Vishnu, the root, and stop the jahya, the sacrifice of the demigods, by killing the inhabitants of the earth. So we will see further. Hiranyakashipu has some transcendental knowledge. He knows quite good the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we will see in the second part of this chapter. But here, yes, it means Narada instructed the Pashetas, Yata taro mula nisheshanena tapyanti tatskanda bhuyopasaka. Kanoparakshayatendriyanam tateva sarvaranam ashyutya. As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach and enlives the senses and limbs of the body, simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are part of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the demons program that destroy Varnashram Dharma. So it will reverse, we will see later, the results of pious and impious activities. You are so powerful. This is Hiranyakashipu's government. That's what he wants to implement. That the purpose. Hiranyakashipu's main purpose was to disturb the demigods. He planned first to kill Vishnu, so that with Lord Vishnu's death, demigods would automatically weaken and die. And in order, his plan B, or second part of his plan, another of his plans was to disturb the residents of the planet Earth. The peace and prosperity of the residents of Earth and all the other planets were maintained by the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. And then Srila Prabhupada explains the Varnashram system related to Bhagavad Gita 4.13, and he explains Bhagavad Gita or Chakya. That is important, that living entities, they depend on food, and food depends on grain, and grain depends on prescribed duties or Chakya. That and yeah, so this he wants to stop this Chakya. That good. At the end of the purpose, one should know, however, that all the necessities of life that human society requires are supplied by the demigod agents of the Lord. No one can manufacture anything. So we cannot manufacture grains and so on. It's provided by nature. That at the end, they are simply directed to sense gratification, nor do they have knowledge of how to perform Chakyas. Lord Chaitanya, however, inaugurated the easiest performance of Chakya, namely Sankirtan Chakya, which can be performed by anyone in the world who accepts the principles of Krishna consciousness. Hiranyakashipu planned to kill the inhabitants of Earth so that Chakya would stop, and the demigods being disturbed would die automatically. When Lord Vishnu, the Jagnesvar, was killed. These were the demonic plans of Hiranyakashipu, who was expert in such activities. So we have seen here in the previous chapter and also the beginning of this chapter, Sukadev Goswami, he is emphasizing enmity so much. Why is he doing this? It is clearly practical. It's not favorable for devotional service. But, it is not in line with devotional service. That what we read here in the beginning of the 7th canto, it's a continuation from what we heard in the 3rd canto. It was Jai and Vijay's desire to be cursed and go to the material world. They did not mind being in the material world, but their only desire was to be fixed in consciousness of Krishna. So this is the fulfillment of their desire. They were so fixed in remembrance of Krishna. But why is Narada Muni emphasizing that? But Narada Muni is not emphasizing the practical mode, which is unfavorable. and full of enmity and anger of the Lord, but is really glorifying the positive. How wonderful is it to be fixed in loving devotion to Krishna? Because we may examine our own consciousness. Do we do that sometimes? Look at our own consciousness, what's going on in our consciousness. That, yes, many times it's Bahu Saka Anantacha. We have so many branches in our consciousness, not touching the lotus feet of Krishna at all. That's a problem. So he's not glorifying here the mood of enmity, but he's glorifying the amazing focus on Krishna one can have through this mood. They thought really of nothing else. That if you are angry at someone, you cannot get their thought off your mind. That, of course, you are all Brahmins. Probably you don't have that problem, but it may occur sometime. That so, what to say of the residents of Vrindavan? The residents of Vrindavan, they were so fixed on the Lord due to their loving attachment to please Krishna. When Gop Kumar arrived at the spiritual world, the Goloka Vrindavan, he saw some gopis and he wanted to ask the way to the palace of Nanda Maharaj. But they were so absorbed in something and they just didn't seem like he was not there, and he was trying to contact them, oh, please. They didn't seem. It was Purnamasi that who noticed him and showed him the way. So absorbed, because it was during the day and they were feeling separation from Krishna, because they were with Krishna during the night, it's mentioned in Krishna book, but they wanted to be with Krishna also during the daytime. And Lord Krishna is called, that's he's stealing the mind of the gopis, that Manohar. So we heard the glories of this type of fixedness on Krishna. And now we began to hear about Hiranyakasipu. So the last verses, last verse of the first chapter, that, just a moment, I have to let in two latecomers for the class. So, updated the presence list. So the last verse of the first chapter, we heard that question from Yudhishthira Maharaj. Why there was such enmity between Hiranyakasipu and his beloved son Prahlad. So, how did Prahlad become such a great devotee of Lord Krishna? There's a story to be told, and the story is quite wonderful that follows now. Emphasizing the mood of enmity and emphasizing the mood of devotion of Prahlad. So, to this point, what is Hiranyakasipu doing? He makes his plans. We will hear about his plans to give trouble to everyone in the universe. And the first thing, what he's going to do hereafter, He's going to preach astonishing. He's going to preach Bhagavad Gita. It's basically the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which Hiranyakashipu is going to speak about. Look, we will look how Hiranyakashipu is introduced, and that's very interesting. That is speaking sweet and shastic words. Why is it introduction? Why is this introduction taking place in this way? What do we learn from that? One can even have transcendental knowledge, but still be demoniac. That's interesting. What's the motivation of Hiranyakashipu? It's to kill Vishnu. Many commentators on Bhagavad Gita, personalists, they want to get Krishna out, kill Krishna. Verse 11. The basic principle of Brahminical culture is to satisfy Lord Vishnu. The personification of sacrificial and ritualistic ceremonies, Lord Vishnu, is the personified reservoir of all religious principles. And is the shelter of all the demigods, the great Pitas, the people in general. When the Brahmins are killed, no one will exist to encourage the Kshatriyas to perform Jagyas, and thus the demigods, not being appeased by Jagya, they will automatically die. So Vishnu is the root of Vedic culture. Now his actual thoughts are coming out of his mouth here. That his plan is to stop the performance of Jagya, destroy the demigods. His goal is to kill Vishnu, kill God. Of course, we know that he cannot succeed in this plan. This mentality is called Asurabhav, the mentality of a demon. So his rule will be very demoniac. Of course, we see today, like in India and in many countries, you have a secular government. There are two ways of a secular government. One, a secular government can say, yes, you can practice. Everyone should be religious, but you choose what religion you practice. But that they are not doing. They are making the whole thing secular. And they are not encouraging religion. Rather, they want to get it out of the government and so on. It's a bit small Hiranyakashipu. So his plan is to stop the performance of Jagya, destroy the demigods. His goal is to kill Vishnu, kill God. Of course, he cannot succeed in that plan. But this mentality is called Asurabhav. This is the mentality of a demon. The Sura and Asura, the devotional and the demoniac. So we small conditioned souls are like Hiranyakashipus in this world. That we do not want God in the center. We want me in the center. That this is what's going on in the material world. The material world is going on with this fighting enmity. It is everywhere in the material world. Now this purport of 11, I will read the first paragraph. Still, Vishnu is a central point of Brahminical culture. Hiranyakashipu was planned to kill Vishnu, for if Vishnu were killed, naturally the Brahminical culture would also be lost. With Brahminical culture, Jagya would no longer be performed. And for want of Jagya, the regular distribution of rainfall would cease. Jagya bhavati parayanya. Thus there would be disturbances all over the world. And naturally, the demigods would be defeated. From this verse, we get a clear indication of how human society is disturbed when the Vedic Aryan civilization is killed and the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies performed by the Brahmins are stopped. Kalas, Sudras, Sambhava, because the population of modern world consists mostly of Sudras, the Brahminical culture is lost. It is extremely difficult to re-establish this in a proper way. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has recommended chanting of the holy name of the Lord, which will revive the Brahminical culture. And there he introduces chanting of the holy name as a process to purify our heart. So everyone is a Sudra in Kali Yuga. Srila Prabhupada says, PhDs begging for a job somewhere. The society today, Srila Prabhupada makes the point in a lecture on this verse, it cuts down the ability to strive for wonderful things. But in the purport here, Srila Prabhupada writes, this chanting of the holy name, that's the way to revive Brahminical culture. So how is that? Because beneath the shelter of the holy name, there is no other choice in Kali Yuga. This is the eternal reason for the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, established the Yuga Dharma. It is the shelter of Kali Yuga. That by chanting these holy names, we will develop Brahminical, or the qualities of a devotee. And naturally, a devotee, when he becomes purified, wants to re-establish Krishna's system of Varnashram. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada, he wanted first Brahmins to lead but be successful in Kali Yuga, in re-establishing Varnashram, we must combine that with chanting the holy names, Srila Prabhupada makes the point. Everyone is covered by lower nature. We need to know what our shelter is. So, in the second paragraph, we'll read the second paragraph, that little down. Kali Yuga is full of Sudras and demons. The Brahminical culture is lost and can be revived only by the chanting of the Maha Mantra. Therefore, the Krishna conscious movement or Hare Krishna movement has been inaugurated to revive Brahminical culture very easily, so that people may become happy and peaceful in this life and prepare for elevation. At the end. O King of the Demons, this is from a quote from Madhvacharya from the Brahmana Purana. O King, the demons think that Hari, Lord Vishnu, exists because of the Brahmanas and Jagyas, but factually, Hari is the cause of everything, including the Brahmins and Jagya. Therefore, through the popularizing of Hari Kirtan or the Sankirtan movement, the Brahminical culture and Kshatriya's government will automatically come back, Srila Prabhupada said, and people will be extremely happy. So the Brahmins direct everyone to devotional service. That must be first re-established. If there are no Brahmins, what will become the goal of society? In Kali Yuga, economic development is the highest, but Srimad Bhagavatam says it is not. It is not. It is love for Krishna. So in Kali Yuga, economic development is the highest. That I just heard Bhurijan Prabhu saying when he spoke on a verse in the 17th chapter of the first canto. He spoke about the greenhouse effect. A research group in Australia has concluded the problem coming from the greenhouse gases and effect that the problem are the cows, because cow dung produces methane, and methane is the problem. So the solution is to kill the cows. So that's Kali Yuga. They find some reason somewhere, because economic development is the most important. But of course, the Bhagavatam in Kali Yuga, economic development is the highest, but the Bhagavatam says, no, it's not forgotten. But will everyone accept this? No, they will become angry when they hear it. That the government officials, Srila Prabhupada said, are like plunderers. They plunder everyone through taxes, and they have the power. They have control over the police and the army. So today nobody is satisfied. All plans fail because they are not based on the spiritual truth. If we say that chanting Hare Krishna is going to change the world, it's not only an export business. We need to take ourselves shelter of the holy name. So we will hear further about this in text 12, 13, 14. Bhakti Narasimha Maharaj asked a very interesting question, and that's many devotees may have that question. He says, yes, from the purport on 7-8 of Srila Prabhupada says that as for Rudira, or blood of Lord Vishnu, since there is no possibility of severing Lord Vishnu's head from his body, there is no question of blood. But in the Mahabharata, Bhishma was shooting arrows to the body of Krishna, and Krishna was bleeding. Was Krishna's bleeding some kind of rasa with Bhishma, or a demonstration? That I remember this. And our acharyas, they say about that Krishna wanted to reciprocate with Bhishmadev, and out of love he showed some blood coming, but he has no veins. So, but he showed some blood and you give the answer in your question. It's a kind of rasa, it's lila, to make the lila more attractive. We see that also when Krishna leaves the planet, his foot is hurt. This hunter, Chara, he shoots an arrow, the arrow with the heavy metal on truck on top into Krishna's feet. And Krishna leaves so-called his body. He leaves the so-called body behind. But that's also his lila. Krishna is everything. He cannot really leave something behind. It's also for the lila. And to give some doubts to the atheist, you see, look, he's also an ordinary person, but they forget many things when they say that. But it's all lila, our Acharya says, and that's an interesting point. Now we will read text 12 to 16. So, immediately go wherever there is good protection for the cows and Brahmins, and wherever the Vedas are studied in terms of our ashram principles. Set fire to those places and cut the roots, and cut from the roots the tree there, the roots, the trees there, which are the source of life. The demon's pleasure is giving difficulties to others. That in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, because the Vedic culture is lost, no cow protection. Slaughterhouses also, Srila Prabhupada says even trees should be given protection. You cannot just cut a tree. That Srila Prabhupada writes, this is a proper human civilization, which is indirectly described here. In a perfect human civilization, there must be a class of men fully trained as perfect Brahmins, and then also Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, he explains. Another point he says is also that trees should give you proper protection. And he says, unless there is a Brahmin to guide a Kshatriya to rule perfectly and perfect Vaishya to produce food and to protect the cows, how will you live peacefully? Because in such a Varnashram society, everyone is peaceful. You don't have to worry about your food. The Vaishyas will provide that. You don't have to worry about protection. The Kshatriyas will protect you. You don't have to worry about education. The Brahmins will provide it for free. It's a peaceful society. That, yes. And then, but this demoniac society is producing so much nonsensical literature, huge quantity of newspapers. It's a sign of a demoniac civilization. That contamination today comes also to the internet. That So, and then Srila Prabhupada speaks about the cutting of trees should not be done unless it's for producing books on God, on Krishna consciousness. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada once said, toilet paper only for printing books, he would say. Anyway, it's a bit of a joke that, but interesting. Text 13. Thus, the demons, being fond of disastrous activities, took Hiranyakashipu's instructions on their head with great respect and offered him obeisances. According to his direction, they engaged in envious activities directed against all living entities. These are the demoniac principles, Srila Prabhupada writes. They are envious of the general populace. And today's scientific advancement, he says, exemplifies such envy of the Supreme Lord. That so this is, yes, this is very important, that to understand this envy. We find it also in our society. The secular society will come up with Darwin and the theory of evolution, and they make everyone accept that, because then they can prove, they try to prove God is out of the picture. That's envy. Text 14 and 15. The demons set fire to the cities, villages, pasturing grounds, cow pens, gardens, agricultural fields, and natural forests. They burned the hermitages of the saintly person, the important mines that produced valuable metals, the residential quarters of the agriculturalist, the mountain villages and the villages of the cow protectors, the coward men. They also burned the government capitals. So yes, these are their activities. And now 15. Some of the demons took digging instruments and broke down the bridges, the protective walls and the gates of the cities. Some took axes and began cutting the important trees that produced mango, jackfruit, and other sources of food. Some of the demons took firebrands and set fire to the residential quarters of the citizens. So Shilpa makes the point, Nativitus Vertigati me Vishnum, they don't know the goal of life. That they don't know all activities are mentioned for Samsiddhi Haritoshanam. Text 16. Thus disturbed again and again by the unnatural occurrences caused by the followers of Hiranyakashipu, all the people had to cease the activities of Vedic culture. Not receiving the results of Jagya, the demigods also became disturbed. They left their residential quarters in the heavenly planet and, unobserved by the demons, began wandering on the planet Earth to see the disasters. And now in text 17, the story shifts. We have heard about the plans of Hiranyakashipu, and now is executing them. So we can understand what the cause was of enmity between the Lord, between Hiranyakashipu and the Lord. We heard about Jai and Vijay, and then we could understand the Lord, the cause, why this is happening. The story of Jai and Vijay, the history, the pregnancy of Diti at an inauspicious time, that explained everything. But now the story is shifting. So after performing ritualistic observances for the death of his brother Hiranyakashipu, being extremely unhappy, he tried to pacify his nephews. O king, Hiranyakashipu was extremely angry But since he was a great politician, he knew how to act according to the time and situation. With sweet words, he began pacifying his nephews, whose names were Sakuni, Sambar, Tristi, Bhuttasantapan, Frikka, Kalanab, Mahanab, Arismasu, and Utkasha. He also consoled their mother, his sister-in-law, Rushabanu, as well as his own mother, Diti. He spoke to them as follows. So he spoke to his nephews, to his brothers, children, brother's wife, to his mother, Diti. So Hiranyakashipu is going to preach now. He is preaching Bhagavad Gita, but what are his motives? He has no integrity. He has no interest in what he is preaching. That it's only for his own interest. His motivation is completely wrong. That we have to be careful with our motivations. What do we want to accomplish? To bring our consciousness in line with our goal, with our goals, with our motivations. So that should be our desire. Otherwise, Hiranyakashipu lives within us. And it starts with an analogy. Hiranyakashipu said, "My dear mother, sister-in-law, and nephews, you should not lament for the death of the great hero, for a hero's death in front of his enemy is glorious and desirable." And then he speaks to his mother, Diti. Bhutanam yav samvasa papayam iva sruvate daivana katranitanam unnitamam svakarmabi. My dear mother, in a restaurant or place for drinking cold water, many travelers are brought together, and after drinking water they continue to their respective destinations. Similarly, living entities join together in a family, and later, as a result of their own actions, they are led apart to their destinations. So this is, travelers are brought together. They are there for some time. You meet someone in the train. So that's Jnana and Vairagya. One needs to endeavor separately in Bhakti. It's not just Jnana and Vairagya that so of course in Bhakti it's different. We need to get a higher taste in Bhakti. And that comes only through devotional service. Vishya vinavarnate nirasya dena. That rasa varman rasopya sa param dristva nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But seizing such engagement by practicing a higher taste, one can fix in consciousness. So, one who practices devotional service does not need to endeavor separately for this Jnana and Vairagya. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti-yoga-payochita Yanayat Asubharyam Yanasayat Ahaitukam. We learned in 127 in the first canto that Jnana and Vairagya is produced by Bhakti. It's a side effect. So this presentation here that we hear from Hiranyakashipu is important. We enter deeper in the Bhagavatam, and it will become more esoteric. In the 9th canto, we will hear descriptions of dynasties, and just to make us understand that we also will pass away, very temporary. We meet in this life, and for some time we are together. Also, as devotees, we are together, and then we leave. We go to another situation. That unless we go back to Goloka Vrindavan, the spiritual world, we cannot experience the relations, the eternal relationships. Everything is temporary. All these relationships. When you get older, if I think 50 years ago, I was 10 years old, that I was living in a small village around Brussels, and everyone were Christians, Flemish culture. That yeah, if I look back now, 50 years later, all the people I knew 50 years ago, they are dead, they are gone, all of them practically. The Flemish culture is not there anymore. The big city took everything over. Everyone speaks French practically now. All the buildings are gone. So if I look at it, I think, did it really happen? It looks like a dream. So it's all temporary, these relationships. So it's also, we should not take this too serious. Our real relationship is our relationship with Krishna. And of course with the devotees. So although Hiranyakashipu was a demon, he had Vedic knowledge and understanding. That's interesting. Demons have used Vedic knowledge. I remember reading in the Ramayana that the son of Ravan, Indrajit, I think, yes, he was doing sacrifices in the mountain to get power. And Lakshman was sent to disturb these sacrifices so that they could not perform it. But also Ravan, before he was going to fight, Rakshasi Brahmins were chanting Vedic hymns that to create auspiciousness for the fight. So these demons, they followed Vedic culture. So they were quite advanced in if we compare to today's situation here in Kali Yuga, that nobody is following Vedic culture anymore. Only a handful of devotees are trying to revive it. But Hiranyakashipu, he was wearing a dhoti, Vedic culture. Yes. So he had Vedic knowledge. And he gave advice to his family members, which was quite sound. But they do not use their intelligence for the service of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada said, therefore they are demons. So still also although his motivations are not right, we should carefully listen to this basic knowledge of the second canto of Bhagavad Gita and ask ourselves the question, why do I serve? Do I serve for my own benefit or for Krishna? If we focus always on ourselves, then we should lament for our fallen condition. That then we are a bit Hiranyakashipu, using this knowledge for selfish purposes. That, of course, text 22, Hiranyakashipu will say, the soul has no death for the soul. That the spirit soul, the living entity, has no death, for is eternal and inexhaustible. Being free from material contamination, he can go anywhere in the material world or the spiritual world. Is fully aware and completely different from the material body. But because of being misled by the misuse of his slight independence, he is obliged to accept subtle and gross bodies created by the material energy, and thus be subjected to so-called material happiness and distress. Therefore, one should not lament for the passing of the spirit soul from the body. The same knowledge Krishna gives to Arjuna. Yeah, that if one comes to the spiritual platform, understand our real nature as a spirit soul, there's no reason to lament. So the essence of this, of what Hiranyakashipu says here, is explained by Lord Krishna in 220. 220 in that section of the Bhagavad Gita about the jnana of the soul summarizes everything a bit. Najayate midyajeva kadachinyam budva bhavitava nabhuyaha ayo nitya sasvatoyam purano nahanityanyamani sarire. For the soul there is never birth nor death at any time. There's not coming into being. It's unborn, eternal, existing, ever-existing, primeval. You cannot kill it. It's not slain when the body is slain. Yes. So it said, is obliged to accept subtle and gross bodies created by the material energy and thus subjected by so-called happiness and distress. So that relates to Bhagavad Gita 13:22. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport. Purusa bhaktistoe bhukte parthachan gunan karnam gunasangrasya satasatyo nijanmasi. The living entity in the material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. That now we are text. Yeah, so we are infected by the modes. Therefore we are taking birth again and again, taking bodies due to infections of material desires for previous life. That material desires, these material desires makes us taking birth again, and then in the next life we try to fulfill these material desires, but they are not fulfilled, they are remaining. The new material desires comes, we take birth again, and it continues like that, infected by the modes, by the three modes, which means material desires. That so text 23 and 24. Because of the movements of the water, the trees on the bank of a river, when reflected on the water, seem to move. Similarly, when the ice moves, because of some mental derangement, the land appears also to move. So yes, actually, Srila Prabhupada writes, the living entity does not move. The living entity does not take birth or accept death. But because of transient, subtle, and gross bodies, the living entity moves from one place to another. Then he quotes from Prema Vivakta that when a living entity is conditioned by material nature, it is exactly like a person haunted by ghosts. One should therefore understand the fixed position of the spirit soul, and now is carried away by the waves of material nature of different bodies and different situations under lamentation and hankering. One achieves the success of life and one understands the constitutional position of the self and is undisturbed by the conditions created by material nature. Hiranyakashipu continues that in the same way, O my gentle mother, when the mind is agitated by the movements of the modes of material nature, the living entity, although freed from all different phases of subtle and gross body, thinks that he has changed from one condition to another. That because Srila Prabhupada quotes 1084:13. This verse he quotes many times. Saiva Gokara. Such persons are nothing but cows and asses. Those who identify with the body, those who think their land worshipable, that those who go to holy places just to take a bath and not to meet saintly persons. Yes. Now text 25 till 27. Here, Hiranyakashipu is going to point rightly to the cause of our suffering. In his bewildered state, the living entity accepts the body and the mind to be the self, considering some people to be his kinsmen and others to be outsiders. Because of this misconception, he suffers. Indeed, the accumulation of such concocted material ideas is the cause of suffering and so-called happiness in the material world. So that was also the problem of Arjuna, that Krishna told him, yes, you cannot kill Bhishmadev. But still Arjuna said, yes, but I don't want to be the cause that they leave their bodies, that even if they have to die. Because I'm attached to the situation as it is now. I will greatly suffer when Bhishmadev is gone. So that's our position. The conditioned soul as thus situated must take birth in different species and work in various types of consciousness, thus creating new bodies. The continued material life is called samsara. Birth, death, lamentation, foolishness, and anxiety are due to such material considerations. Thus, we sometimes come to a proper understanding and sometimes fall again to wrong conception of life. So now, hereafter, Hiranyakashipu is going to tell us a story. But we will keep that story for tomorrow. And that will bring us to the end of the chapter. Then that's a very interesting story. But now we have the screen here. We go to the... So Hiranyakashipu is criticizing the Lord. That so the first question is explain Hiranyakashipu's criticism of the Lord, and he presented many kinds of criticism. But I want you now to post at most five words, not longer, summarizing what you think is the most significant or most important criticism from Hiranyakashipu's viewpoint, but what he saw as the most significant, or what was the most important criticism he gave to the Lord. That he said many things, but what was the most significant, he said, or the most heavy thing, according to your opinion? And you can post that in the chat. And now we will have a break. It's 17 past 5, and we will resume at 27 past 5. In 10 minutes we come back, and you can put your comments in the chat, and then we will start discussing different points that different points of that Hiranyakashipu made and what we can learn from it. So thank you. Hare Krishna. See you in 10 minutes. So, Hare Krishna, we are back. So, thank you for all your comments. If we go over the comments, we see the most prominent criticism or most important criticism is the Lord is not neutral, he's partial. And that's exactly what this pastime is given us an example to demonstrate the opposite. We will see in the next chapters. We'll show how the Lord is impartial. The second kind of criticism, seems all in the same category. Is influenced by Maya. It can be killed. He has a restless and untrustworthy mind, like a child. So that shows that Hiranyakashipu has a misconception that the Supreme Lord is subjected to duality. He's like one of us. So if we go over it in detail, you can see on. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead has given up his natural the tendency of equality toward the demons and demigods. Although he is a Supreme Person now influenced by Maya, has assumed the form of a boar to please his devotees, the demigods, just like a restless child. And here you see the restless child. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has given up his natural tendency of equality. Yeah, that's the same. Just as a restless child leans towards someone. And then he says, the Lord can change his mind at any time. Hiranyakashipu thought, and therefore his words and activities are like those of children. Actually, because the demons are ordinary human beings, their minds change, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, and being materially conditioned. They think that the Supreme Personality of God is conditioned also, as the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Avajananti Mamuda Manusam Tanam Ashritam, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. Demons always think that Vishnu can be killed. As for Rudira, or the blood of Lord Vishnu, since there is no possibility of severing Lord Vishnu's head from his body, there is no question of blood. Now describe Hiranyakashipu's plan to kill Lord Vishnu. Does someone wants to answer this question? His plan was twofold. But what were the two aspects of his plan? Someone wants to answer this? Please raise your hand. Yes, Maharaj Prabhu. Please unmute.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
In verse 8, he mentions his plan that he wanted to sever Lord Vishnu's head with his trident. So he wanted to directly kill Lord Vishnu with his trident.
Yes, so that was his first plan. He had more plans. So Anand Kaur Sundar Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So his another plan was that he'll kill the Brahmanas, and that is how the yagyas would stop and dharma won't be performed. And in this way, not being getting the offerings of the yagya, there will be death for Vishnu as well as for the demigods.
That was his plan B.
Yeah, Maharaj.
Yes, please speak.
Krishnagati speaking, Maharaj.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, please take my obeisance, Maharaj, first.
Mm-hmm.
Here, Hiranyakashipu is giving beautiful lectures about philosophy, but he is he's thinking that I will kill Lord Vishnu and satisfy my brother by Hiranyaksha. So this is also, he is exhibiting his very much attached to his body and body concept of life, but he is talking about philosophy. That is a very contrasting character of a demon.
Yeah, so he does not believe in the philosophy and does not practice it. And that's interesting. He uses it to get his purpose fulfilled. And what is his purpose? He wants to console his family members. So we can see here. So Hiranyakashipu planned to kill the inhabitants of the earth so that Jagya would stop, and the demigods being disturbed would die automatically when Lord Vishnu, the Jagyeshvar, was killed. These were the demonic plans of Hiranyakashipu, who was expert in such activities. Interesting is, he knew that Vishnu was the root, is the root. That's interesting. And the basic principle of Brahminical culture is to satisfy Lord Vishnu, the personification of sacrificial and ritualistic ceremonies. Lord Vishnu is the personified reservoir of all religious principles, and is the shelter of all the demigods, the great Pittas, all the people in general. When the Brahmanas are killed, no one will exist to encourage the Kshatriyas to perform Jagyas, and thus the demigods not being appeased by Jagya will automatically die. So he wanted to destroy the Brahminical culture, the Kshatriya government, and create chaos all over the world. Now, Hiranyakashipu has made different philosophical points in his preaching to his relatives. Many points of Bhagavad Gita. So, what points do you remember that someone wants to comment? What points do you want? Yes, Maharaj Prabhu, please speak.
Maharaj, Hiranyakashipu said, just like different travelers come together to drink water under a shelter and then go on in their journey. Similarly, some people come together to form a family and then separate. One should not take such things seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yes, like you, Srila Prabhupada gives you example, like you take a train, you meet people on the journey, have some conversation with them, and then you never meet them again. You separate. And that is our situation. These are all the relationships in this world. And we become unnecessarily so attached to this relationship that's also in family life. What's the difference between Grihastha life and the Grihastha life? Grihasthas mainly they have a relationship, man and husband and wife. They have a relationship which the Grihastha does not have. The Grihastha has 4 levels of relationship. The first level is the level of sexual craving. That's there. Therefore, man and wife, girl and boy are attracted. A higher relationship is that husband and wife do things together. They do things together. They sleep together, they eat together. So that. And a third level relationship is they become friends. But these 3 levels of relationship are all temporary. Grihastha is a 4th level of relationship, and that's supporting each other for making spiritual advancement. And thus, the relationship, that is a level of relationship in Grihastha life that must get the focus. The others may also be there, but they are less important. That's also if we consider this philosophy spoken by Hiranyakashipu. All relationships are temporary in this world. Any other point that you find significant in that preaching of Hiranyakashipu that we can learn from? Oh, good. Anandkar Sundar Prabhu, please speak.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So although soul is very blissful, but because of ignorance and misuse of our independence, we have to accept gross and subtle bodies, which is cause of so-called material happiness and distress. So ignorance and the misuse of independence is the root cause.
Yes, this is very important. That we take birth again because of these material desires. That then we must get rid of it. That means our motivation must change. That not to fulfill all our desires, to fulfill Krishna's desire. That okay. Prahlad Vilaspo, you want to say something? Please speak.
Maharaj?
Yes.
Hare Krishna, pranams. I also wanted to say that well, Hiranyakashipu was saying that like the trees are watered or something like that. He was mentioning to his relatives. Then if he kills Vishnu, then automatically the demigods will be killed as well.
Yes, that was his plan. That, but what can we learn from that? That devotees want to establish Varnashram, and first the Brahmins. That so that's just the opposite. That only can offer us a peaceful society. Thank you. That any other points that Hiranyakashipu made that you find important? That okay, then we will see. We will go over again, and we will see if we have forgotten something. So Hiranyakashipu made a hero's death in front of an enemy's warriors. Living entities joined together in a family, but as a result of their own actions, they are led apart to their destinations. Family members are like straws mixed together in whirlpools, and later disposed again by the same waves. They float alone in the water. And that's reality. We are all going our own way, floating alone. And yes, at the time of death, nobody can help us. We are to fly our own airplane, Srila Prabhupada said. Yeah, Hema Gopi writes, yes, another point is, we are not a body, but spirit soul. So we should not lament with the loss of the body. Interesting. Hiranyakashipu knows that he is not a body, that he is a spirit soul, but he does not know who he really is. That you are not a body is nice, but what's the nature of the spirit soul? It's a part and parcel of Vishnu or Krishna, and he doesn't get that point. So the spirit soul has no death, for is eternal and inexhaustible. Being free from material contamination, it can go anywhere in the material and spiritual worlds. The soul is different from the material body. Being misled by the slight independence, the living entity infected by the modes of material nature is born in different families and species of life. Karnam guna sangosyasta satyon vishanmasu. Infected, intoxicated we are. That Queen Kunti uses this. That she speaks of 4 intoxications: Janma, Aishvarya, Shruti, Shibir. That Janma, thinking one's birth very important. and social position. Asparea, becoming attached to so many objects of sense gratification in this world. So that then beauty, which is attached to beauty, it's so temporary in the material world. And education, all one's knowledge one has collected. Just think about these things. Think in 10 minutes you have to leave your body. Then what's the use of everything? All our plans, they become futile. No meaning at all. So then, Hiranyakasipu says yes. By agitation of the mind, by the material modes, the living entity thinks that he has changed from one condition to another. Yeah, that the spirit soul is always unchanged. Manodharma, the spirit soul carried away by mental activities, suffer from so-called condition of material life. That so much concern we have about the body. That thinking, yes, relationships are changing, my position has changed. That, yes, you lose your job, my position has changed. But no, the soul is fixed, sthana. That it's only the body, material nature. These are very important lessons. Hiranyakasipu is preaching the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. But did we realize it? If we look deeply, mostly not much. Not much. It's so difficult. That's then bewildered the living entity accepting the body and the mind to be the self, considers some people as kinsmen and others to be outsiders, and thus he suffers happiness and distress. Birth, death, lamentation, foolishness, and anxiety are due to material considerations. So all these relationships. I maintained relationship with many people, also the devotees. But then at a certain moment, I was thinking, why is that? Because I want a relationship. I stopped contacting them, and the relationship and all the relationships practically stopped. I wanted a relationship, but they did not want a relationship with me. Interesting. Think about that. Yes, that it's so futile. The conditioned soul comes from an unknown place and returns after death to that same unknown place. That's a point he will make later. We will hear that more, which is controlled by material nature. Knowing this, why do they usually lament? You are attached so many things, and then you take birth again. Everything starts from zero, and there you go again. It's so futile. So hearing this knowledge is important for us. But yes, we will hear tomorrow further lessons that we can learn from the teaching of Hiranyakasipu. So Hiranyakasipu is now our guru, but it's not a real guru because he does not practice what he preaches. But still, he makes valid points which we may consider. So are there any other questions? Yeah. So, Anand Kaur Sundar Prabhu, please speak.
Maharaj, I have two questions.
Yeah,
So,
start with one.
So Maharaj, first question is that Hiranyakasipu is addressed as Sri Hiranyakasipu Uvacha, as if no Sukdev Goswami is giving him a lot of respect. So I didn't understand the reason for that.
Well, the reason is very simple. That Hiranyakasipu is Jai. Jai, gatekeeper of Vaikuntha, and a great devotee of the Lord, who has done service for Lord Narayan since time immemorial, practically. And so he knows that Hiranyakasipu is Jai, a great devotee of the Lord, and that he only plays a role. He has a costume as Hiranyakasipu to play a role that is only playing a role for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he addresses him very respectfully. Does that make sense?
Yes, Maharaj.
Thank you.
I can ask next question also.
Okay, yeah.
My next question is regarding relationship with devotees. So generally, when we come to Krishna consciousness, we also have relationship with devotees. And then we find that some devotees, they leave, they go somewhere else, and that pains.
Yeah.
So I really wonder that whether we should strike that relationship with devotees or not, or what should be our mood. So you have big experience. So can you share something regarding that? What should we do?
Well, I traveled for many years with Prahladananda Swami as his servant. And my relationship with him is a relationship of service. We went through so many challenges together. Sometimes we were together arrested and so on. That was quite interesting. But that is our relationship. We serve together in a mission. And I felt very satisfied with that up to date with that relationship. But it's not a relationship where you create friendship to get mutual benefit and to feel good. No. So it depends. Our relationship with devotees is best spiritual. If it's spiritual, then this will not quickly break. And when you are separated, yes, you continue serving. But attachment should be spiritual. So if the spiritual master, we learn from the spiritual master but yes, spirit relationship with devotees may break, and the separation is painful. I can tell you, my spiritual master has left this world, and I have still periods that I can feel that I really feel for everything void. Practically no sense of to live anymore. But still we continue. Because what's more important is our service to him. But that pain of separation we feel from devotees helps us to spiritually advance. If the relationship is material and you feel separation because of attachment to things nothing to do with Krishna consciousness, that's just suffering. That will not help us. does that help to understand that, Anand Kaur?
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes,
okay,
Maharaj.
Okay. So Hema Gopi, he writes here, that I have a question from CBA, of chapter close book, chapter 1. Can I ask here, please? Yes, you can also speak, Hema Gopi. Please speak.
Thank you, Maharaj. There is a question in CBA chapter 1. Explain what fire, water, and sky represent from verse 9 and describe how one can determine who is Devata, Rakshasa, or an Asura. So the purport, it's very clear. Fire is representing mode of goodness, water is representing mode of passion, and sky is representing mode of ignorance. But I'm not able to understand how we link fire to Devata and water to, like, I don't understand the link between the analogy and
This is text 7, you say, or
9.
9 of chapter 1, text 9. Yes. Yeah. So text 9, the all-pervading personality of God that exists within the heart of every living being, and an expert thinker can perceive how is present there to a large extent. That just as one can understand the supply of fire in wood, the water in a water pot, or the sky within a pot, one can understand whether a living entity is a demon or a demigod by understanding that living entity's devotional performance. Yeah, it's just 3 examples. Fire in wood. You see wood, but the fire does not come out. When it comes in contact with fire, then it will burn. And the water in a water pot, or the sky within a pot. Yeah, but whether the living entity, or a demon or demigod, by understanding the living entity's devotional performances. You see the pot and you understand there is sky inside or there is water inside. So you see a devotee, and by his performance you can understand whether he's a devotee. Why is he? How is he empowered by the Supreme Lord? And you can see a demon if you see that by his activities you can see that he's acting against the religious principles. So you can understand by someone's performance that is a demon or a devotee. That means you have the wood and the fire. That when you look at wood, you don't see the fire. But when it's used to burn, then fire comes out. So by someone's activities, you can see them. Is he a devotee or a demon? And that's the analogy what's mentioned here. That's what I understood. Does that help?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you.
Okay. So, Nidai Madhav Prabhu, you want also to speak, please?
Anuppada Maharaj. Yes. So the question was in text number 8 of the same chapter in the purport, Prabhupada mentions, after attaining Sayujya Mukti, the demons are sometimes promoted to the Vaikuntha world where they receive the reward of the Lord's garland prasad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little.
You want me to clarify that?
Yes, Maharaj.
Well, that we explained yesterday or the day before, that Shishupal was entered the body of Lord Krishna when Krishna hit him with the Sudarshan Chakra. So he got Sayuja liberation for the moment. But then he remained in his body until the end of the Marsala Lila. Krishna left to back to Goloka Vrindavan. But he first visited Brahma. He promised a short visit. They went through Vaikuntha to Goloka Vrindavan. And in Vaikuntha, then when he was in Vaikuntha, the Shishupal's body got back one's eternal form in Vaikuntha. So he got the same form as Lord Narayan. But so that is demonstrating that. So first he gets Sayuja temporary, and then he was promoted to Vaikuntha. Does that help, Nitai Mother?
Yes, Maharaj. This is an exceptional case. I mean, these are Jai Vijay, they are eternally there. But I mean, in general, demons, do we have some kind of example like that? Getting the mercy of the Lord's garland, they also are promoted, something like that?
Yeah, there are six exceptions here. That here they were all Ravan, Kumbhakarna, and Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksa, and we had Shishupal and Dantavraka. They were exceptional because to go back to Vaikuntha, you must accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you are an impersonalist and you don't believe in God, in Vishnu, then you cannot go to the spiritual world, not possible. So it depends also on the conception of the living entity. It depends also on other factors, like your experience in previous lives, and you may have been a devotee for many lifetimes, and then Krishna decides you become a demon, and he gives you salvation, and you go back to the spiritual world. So it's really individual, but nothing to worry for us about. Krishna knows for sure for any one of us. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's 6 o'clock already. Thank you for all your questions and interesting discussion. So we will continue tomorrow with the last part of this chapter and hear the story that Hiranyakashipu is telling to his relatives. Very interesting. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Jai Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranam.
Jai. Hare
So much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Jai.
Dandavat pranam.